Incredible. GameStop is apparently on the verge of a Bitcoin investment, and the stock is skyrocketing after this news was released. Let's take a look at what's behind this. Even more shocking is that the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the USA, is supposed to be nationalized. At least that's the prediction and statement from Alex Jones. We'll also look into what's behind this. And many people assume that the national debt of the USA is 34 or 35 trillion. Now, it comes out on the Joe Rogan podcast that the national debt could potentially be twice as high because there's a huge black hole in the Pentagon. And this black hole in the Pentagon would double the national debt here in the USA. Additionally, we have a meeting between Nayib Bukele, the Bitcoin president here in El Salvador, and Michael Saylor. And now there's heavy speculation about what this is all about. We're going to dive into all of it now. Let's fucking go. Here it says on Kobe Site Ladder, the GameStop stock GME rises by up to 20% after it became known that the company is considering investments in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And just check out this chart. If this isn't a Valhalla candle, then I don't know what is. So it's ultra crazy what's happening right now. And we keep seeing that Bitcoin just massively boosts companies here. Whether it's Metaplanet, MicroStrategy, Mara, Semler Scientific, or now GameStop, almost every company that invests in Bitcoin sees a massive increase in stock value. And now we see the Bitcoin effect again, the Michael Saylor effect. It's just intense. And yes, we need to be a bit cautious here. It hasn't been finally confirmed yet that they will buy Bitcoin. It might come out later. Now I see a squirrel over there. How cool. But I can't show it to you right now. I don't think you can see it here. Back there, squirrels are running around. We still have to wait until it's officially confirmed here that the orders will go through, because right now it's just the announcement that it should be bought and evaluated. They also have huge cash reserves. Then it would make sense for them to buy Bitcoin if they have such large cash reserves. But now we have to move on to the next point, because I was truly shocked when I saw the new podcast from Alex Jones, who also has a huge reach. And he has a very interesting prediction. There is currently a dispute between Donald Trump and Jerome Powell. That means Donald Trump wants to lower the interest rates, Jerome Powell does not. Donald Trump said, okay, then maybe we'll just remove Jerome Powell. He didn't say it directly like that, but he might have hinted at it. And now there's a huge prediction concerning the Federal Reserve from Alex Jones. Check it out. First, Jerome Powell is quoted again at the beginning, and then comes the prediction from Alex Jones.
Victoria Guido with Politico. Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
I'm not listening to anything Trump says. I'm not doing what Trump says. I'm going to do what I want because I'm independent, except we can revoke that charter. Congress can do that, you snake. And by the way, Powell used to be really arrogant. He ain't looking too arrogant these days. And now you start to make noises about, well, maybe I will work with Trump. Yeah, maybe you better capitulate. And we're going to nationalize that bank, just so you know, buddy boy. And that means the people that own the shares in it. Thank you. That, you know that's coming next, don't you? Oh, the Rothschilds sent the British Empire at the Battle of Waterloo, crashed their stock market, saying Napoleon won, got 98% of the stock market for nothing, and have run the British Empire since then and own our Federal Reserve. Well, guess what? We're nationalizing it. You heard it here first. Thank you. Oh, that's a lot bigger than taking Canada or Greenland or the Panama Canal. We'll just take it all.
So that's probably one of the craziest predictions I've heard this year. And Alex Jones is saying it too. Hey, this is probably bigger than taking the Panama Canal or taking Greenland. Or Donald Trump now wants the Gaza Strip or wanted Canada, and who knows what else he wants to do. But he clearly says, hey, this is one of the biggest stories that could happen here if the private Federal Reserve is nationalized. But I'm putting a lot of question marks behind it. It's a very exciting prediction, but we also have to stay realistic. The Federal Reserve is, let's say, a power instrument that can't be easily removed. And then there's also the deep state. And if you do something against it, you'll be targeted pretty quickly. That's always the story where a lot of people say, hey, Donald Trump is really taking on the big players like the Federal Reserve, and many people are unsure if this will turn out well. We've seen time and again that when you attack such big players, heads can roll. But now there's something much more intense, a leak, or I don't know if you can call it a leak, but a revelation, a publication specifically on the Joe Rogan podcast, where it's being discussed that the US debt is much higher. I mean, it's clear to everyone anyway, there are implicit and explicit debts, meaning we have the official debt of 34 trillion, but we also have to include the unofficial, or rather, the informal debts. These are pension claims and so on. And the unofficial debts, I'm not entirely sure right now, but it's definitely more than double, rather 3 to 4 times or even more. Some even say 5 or 6 times or so, depending on how you calculate it. But the unofficial debts that are essentially part of the US system, it's the same in Germany, it's like this in all indebted nations. The unofficial figures are much higher here because they always make the calculations look good. But now there's the revelation that the Pentagon is a black hole that could contain as much debt as the entire national debt of the USA. Check it out on Joe Rogan, absolutely fascinating.
What people, even now, they're seeing these USAID scandals with funding to the Democrats, or funding to some of these blob internationalist Republicans, or funding to these media institutions. You ain't seen nothing yet when you get to the Pentagon stuff, because USAID was created effectively in part to assist Pentagon activity under humanitarian front.
So I can't play the whole interview, but I'll tell you the main points he basically revealed. So first, he says it's much, much crazier than what's happening at USAID. We have a huge black hole that is unpublished here. If this comes to light, it could be a massive revelation. And additionally, the Pentagon was pampered by USAID. So USAID was responsible for the fact that all the audits in the Pentagon were never successful, and the Pentagon just swallowed up funds endlessly. He says here, this is a quote from the Joe Rogan interview, President Trump tasked Elon Musk with setting the dodge dogs on the Pentagon. Yahoo Finance said the Pentagon has a black hole in its accounting of $35 trillion. That's larger than the entire national debt. I'm not sure. I think the national debt is now slightly larger than $35 trillion. People see the USAID scandals with the funding of the Democrats or the blob Republicans or the media institutions. They haven't seen anything yet. When they come to the Pentagon, things will get much, much more intense. And that's already a stark warning that we're seeing here. That means, on one hand, there are now people saying, hey, the Federal Reserve is going to be nationalized. On the other hand, there are people saying, hey, the USA has twice as much official debt as they pretend to us. So it's really like the dollhouse is slowly being exposed. On the other hand, we have the Department of Government Efficiency here, which is uncovering USAID and such stories. Now the IRS is supposed to be reviewed as well. So now more and more players are starting to falter. Also, all the people from Operation Shock Point are massively under fire, including Elizabeth Warren and whoever else is involved. So if I understood correctly, they are all supposed to be audited or reviewed as well. And that's quite a shocking revelation that's coming our way. And this is all relevant for Bitcoin as well, because just imagine if suddenly the debts are twice as high, then that's also a massive signal for Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin you can't really obscure things. You can't just have some shadow budgets and then have some shadow balances, and then 10 years later it comes out, oh sorry, hey, we don't have 34 trillion in debt, but we actually have nearly 80 trillion in debt or something like that. I mean, just imagine if a company did that. Suddenly the debt levels are somehow twice as high or something. I mean, that's not possible. Any company would be insolvent here, or any normal person would be personally bankrupt. And if a big country does it, if the USA does it, then it's just normal here and no one really gets upset because it's so complex and no one dares to question the whole thing. But now there's the Department of Government Efficiency. They're bringing all these things to the surface, and Donald Trump has already said that there might even be uncertainties or, let's say, inconsistencies with the government bonds. That means even the government bonds in the USA, meaning the Treasury itself, might not be what we think it is, and we need to watch very closely how this develops, because it could trigger a massive Bitcoin upheaval here. And now I actually have a really, really cool story for you, and we see Michael Saylor together with Bukele here discussing, and now there are questions, for example. Some people are saying, okay, is it because Bukele wants to buy more Bitcoin now? Max Kaiser once said that Bukele wants to increase the Bitcoin holdings here. We have also seen from time to time, I think last week there were 3 days, when Bitcoin holdings were not bought by El Salvador, because they buy 1 Bitcoin every day. But apparently that was a mistake, and then the Bitcoin office posted 3 days. Later, there was some error, and then I believe they bought 3 Bitcoins in 1 day. We see that they consistently buy 1 Bitcoin. Sometimes I believe it was even more than 1 Bitcoin a day. Then some people said, okay, those were some refunds from the Chivo wallet, but we've seen this several times now, so it could also be that these were additional purchases. There was also speculation about whether El Salvador is buying more Bitcoin with money from the International Monetary Fund. And now the question is, what did Bukele discuss with Michael Saylor here? And now I actually have to tell you something from behind the scenes. Earlier, I was out and about on the scooter. We just drove to the next town. I was with Jens here, the owner of Cuatro Amigos, and I had to pick up a package. It's really weird to have a package sent to El Salvador. There are no addresses or anything like that here. So I had it sent to the next town, which is about a half-hour ride on the scooter. That's actually a cool experience, and I can tell you more about it living here without having a house number or a postal address. At first, I thought it was pretty weird not to have a mailing address. But now I see the big advantages, because if you get a ticket, where would they send it? If someone wants something from you, how would they contact you? This means you're completely anonymous here, or not anonymous, but you're just much harder to find. This can definitely have certain advantages in Germany, where if something happens, you immediately have a ticket or something in your door or mailbox. That doesn't work like that here. Anyway, we were driving to the next bigger city to pick up the package. Suddenly, we see police, military everywhere. A really large presence. So you occasionally see people here in El Salvador because they still have to get a handle on clan crime or just be cautious. And they are very, very reserved, for sure. I was wearing a helmet. Jens, of course, wasn't wearing a helmet. I told him, put on the helmet, put on the helmet. No, he didn't want to wear a helmet. Then the police officer stopped us. Then he said, put it on now. Don't you have a helmet with you? We said no. Then he wasn't allowed to continue driving. Then we just said, okay, come on, I'll drive around the next corner now. Then Jens basically walked around the next corner, and at the next corner, I basically picked him up on the motorcycle again. Because in El Salvador, it's not common to have so many police officers. We just thought it was a special case that there were so many police officers here. So I drove around the corner, 500 meters further away. The police officer was satisfied, saw that I was continuing without Jens. I had a helmet and Jens just kept walking. And then I picked him up at the next corner. Then we continued driving and we said, okay, now we have 2 stars like in GTA, or maybe 1 star, so not too many. We weren't being chased, but at least we had 1 or 2 stars or something like that. And then the next police officers came. Then I stopped just in time before I drove into the checkpoint. Jens got off again and I drove around the corner again. Then when the police officers had passed, he got back on and I continued driving. But then more police officers came again. That means the place was full of police. And then we asked ourselves, what's going on here? Why so much police presence? And in any case, when we came back, we found out, yes, Bukele apparently is coming here. And now we also know, yes, it wasn't just Bukele who came, but also Bukele with Michael Saylor. And that's, of course, a very, very funny story. That means Bukele is now chilling here with us on the beach with Michael Saylor, and they're talking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or I don't know what they're doing. Anyway, folks, if you're also bullish on Bitcoin, I'll put a link below to 21 Bitcoin, where you can buy Bitcoin easily, safely, and simply. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. And if you're looking for an optimal hardware wallet, I'll put a link below to a TREZOR hardware wallet so you can easily and securely store your Bitcoin, protect yourself from thieves and theft, and with the code Bitcoin Hotel, you get 10% off when purchasing such a hardware wallet. Absolute recommendation. Folks, see you. Peace out.